You start to enjoy it after a while. See a person plead and cry for help. The blood, everything, it's weird. It's a sickness. Because there's so much history through the NF and the Mexican Mafia. While Mexican Mafia members are actually going out and killing NF members, this is the bloody rise and redemption of Boxer Enriquez, a Mexican Mafia killer. Today, we're going to continue with the reading of the Black Hand. Chapter 2, Mexican Mafia History. It all began in 1957 at the Deuel Vocational Institution, DVI, in Tracy, California. 5 years before Rene Enriquez was even born. That lockup was then considered the last stop of the state's most incorrigible violent juvenile inmates. It was in effect a junior prison. Those who were too difficult to handle in reform school were sent to California Youth Authority, CYA, and those too violent for CYA ended up at DVI. At the time, it was often referred to as Gladiator School, a place where already tormented teenagers honed their criminal skills and acted out against rivals from enemy barrios. As the Mexican Mafia population grew in Southern California, so did a barrio culture that spawned street gangs with traditional rivalries, neighborhood against neighborhood. Deadlier and deadlier gangs were formed to protect home turf. They called themselves Vato Locos, crazy dudes. In his book, Mexican Mafia, Altar Boy the Hitman, former MMA member Ramon Mundo Mendoza says, the more aggressive gang members went about the serious business of establishing violent reputations. Along with the reps came the celebrity status. A completely abnormal social value system was established. Some of the gang members, in honor of their ancient Aztec or Toltec roots, or even more recent Apache and Yaquis tribes, took on Indian warrior names such as Caballo, Chato, Crazy Horse, Crow, Cuchillo, Geronimo, and Indio. Others adopted more modern gang handles like Shotgun, Machine Gun, Capone. In either case, the names were adopted out of pride to generate fear and respect. At DBI, 16-year-old Luis Huero Buff Flores of Wine Gardens, a Los Angeles suburb, is credited with coming up with the idea of uniting all Mexican-American Southern California gangs into one big prison super gang or gang of gangs. Together, they would cease Mexican street gang rivalries inside prison, control the heroin trafficking, protect themselves against unruly prison guards, and unite as brothers, carnales, against rival black and white inmates. Mundo Mendoza observes, these guys were raging maniacs whose modus operandi was all often were extremely aggressive, had no respect for their adversaries, and unabated disdain and contempt for general population. We felt bulletproof. Prison lore has it that Huero Buff was fascinated with the power and mystique of the Italian Mafia and dubbed the new group Mexican Mafia, or La Familia Mexicana. There were about a dozen original members who quickly doubled their ranks and terrorized inmates, stealing their possessions, mostly canteen items and drugs. Mundo Mendoza notes, the goal in the beginning was to terrorize the prison system and enjoy prison comforts while doing time. Those who resisted the extortion were beaten or stabbed. Huero Buff later said, it was a kid's trip then, just a bunch of homeboys from East LA. If I felt like killing somebody, I would. If I didn't, I wouldn't. We were just having fun then. The power was intoxicating. The majority of the early members did come from East Los Angeles with violent reputations. Oyo Soto Maravilla, Barrio Nueva Estrada, White Fence, Big Hazard, Clover, Avenues. Everyone was recruited for their fearlessness, aggressiveness, and ruthlessness. Each candidate had to be sponsored by a made member and voted in by the entire group. All were supposedly equal in status, were sworn to secrecy about Lama's existence, pledged their allegiance for life, and vowed to kill for the organization, and promised to never show fear, weakness, hesitation, or doubt. Any infraction would be punishable by death. Memorable names of the AMA pioneers like Mike Hatchet Eisen, Eddie Potato Nose Loera, Jesus Liro Pedrosa, Alejandro Jando Lechuga, Gabriel Little Sluggo Castañeda, Benjamin Topo Peters, Joe Colorado Arias, and Richie Ruiz. Rodolfo Cheyenne Cadena, who was at the age of 15, stabbed a local gang rival to death outside a dance hall in Bakersfield, is widely known as the co-founder of the Mexican Mafia. He was only 5'4" and weighed 120 pounds, but he was handsome, a natural leader with tremendous energy, high intelligence, a hair-trigger temper, and undisputed presence. He suggested that the word "eme" be used along with the term Mexican Mafia. It added a Spanish flavor for those who still bickered over the name, believing it was too much like the Italians. Also, "eme" could be used as code word around prison guards and others unfamiliar with the language. By 1961, the administration at DBI, alarmed by the escalating violence, had transferred a number of charter MM members to San Quentin, hoping to discourage their violent behavior by intermingling them with hardened adult convicts. It didn't work. For example, the story goes that Cheyenne arrived on the lower yard and was met by a 6'5", 300-pound black inmate who planted a kiss on his face and announced that this scrawny teenager would now be his bitch. Shy returned a short time later, walked up to the unsuspecting predator, and stabbed him to death with a jailhouse knife or shank. There are more than 1,000 inmates on the yard. No witnesses stepped forward, and only one dead man entertained the idea that Cadena was anyone's bitch. Other young MM members at San Quentin continued their reign of terror. A pair of mafia killers, for no apparent reason, stunned Robert Bobby Loco Lopez, who staggered across the upper yard, hit the pavement in convulsions, and died. A few days later, the deadly duo stabbed another clueless inmate. MS Alfredo Cuate Jimenez killed another convict on the lower yard, and Mike Hatchet Eisen took out another inmate in the prison gymnasium. Tony Chacon was from Lopez Maravilla, the largest gang in East Los Angeles at the time. It also has the largest number of inmates in the state prison system. Chacon made the mistake of bad-mouthing the ME. So ME hitmen Richie Ruiz and Eddie Lalo Moreno took him out in San Quentin Adjustment Center unit that housed the worst prison bad guys. Charlie White was a black inmate upset about the MS bullying tactics. He shouted out obscenities at MA stalwarts locked up in the cells, singling out Hondo Lechuga. Those who fought with their mouths from behind closed cell doors were derisively called cell soldiers. Shortly after, cell doors were racked open to let inmates out into the exercise yard. An MA soldier greeted White on the tier with a series of shank shots that closed that cell soldier's mouth forever. Juan Zamilpa was a highly feared and respected inmate who had killed an informer about a year earlier, not to be messed with. He let it be known he would take no shit from the Mexican Mafia. Cadena, believing Zamilpa might be of some use to the MA on the yard, tried to reason with him to stop disrespecting the brothers. Zamilpa wouldn't hear it. On his way back to his cell, Zamilpa was stabbed 11 times by 4 MA members. It was not possible to disrespect someone from the grave. It was all killing for the sake of killing, to claim superiority on the yard, to let other cons know Emma should be feared. Ramon Mendoza, who participated in 20 mob hits before he defected in the late 1970s, says they dedicated their lives to making a career out of crime. He calls the Emma the special forces of the gang underworld. Mendoza says we recruited the worst of the worst, people who were willing to kill at the drop of a hat for the organization. In 1967, President Lyndon Baines Johnson increased U.S. military strength to 500,000 troops in Vietnam to defeat the Viet Cong Army. During that same year, Mexican Mafia strength grew no more than 30 hardcore members, and they controlled drug trafficking, gambling, extortion, loan sharking, and prostitution, not only at San Quentin but elsewhere, as their numbers and influence spread throughout the DBI and California penal system. Their MS quest for complete control alienated many other Mexican-American inmates who were fed up with Mexican Mafia bullies stabbing, killing, and stealing their watches, rings, cigarettes, or anything else of value. Some of them secretly formed a new prison gang called La Nuestra Familia, NF, or Our Family. It was first established in the mid-1960s at the California Training Facility in Soledad. Some of the early members were from the Los Angeles area, but NF drew inmates primarily from rural communities in Northern California. The Mexican Mafia saw NF as a lame and inferior, just a bunch of farmers or farmeros. However, in 1968 at San Quentin, a full-scale riot broke out after a Mexican Mafia soldier or soldado sold a pair of shoes from an NF sympathizer. 19 inmates were stabbed, and one MA association ended up dead. The battle became known as the Shoe War, and it established the Nuestra Familia as a major MA rival. After the Shoe War, a number of Mexican Mafia hitters were transferred to Folsom State Prison, considered then to be the end of the line for hardcore convicts. Jailhouse legend Joe Morgan was one of the notorious inmates there. He was tall, muscular, bald-headed Croatian with a near IQ genius who grew up in East Los Angeles and San Pedro barrios. Beat his 32-year-old girlfriend's husband to death with a rubber hammer when he was only 16 and buried the body in a shallow grave. He robbed banks, escaped from jail twice, committed multiple murders, and had Mexican cartel heroin connections and ties to the Italian Mafia, despite the fact that he was not Mexican and entered the Mexican Mafia at the advanced age of 40. Morgan was dubbed the godfather of La M within a few years. He had been shot in the leg during a bank robbery, and gangrene set in. It was amputated below the knee. He earned the nickname Peg Leg, but no one ever called him that to his face. About the same time Morgan became the godfather, Nuestra Familia formed an alliance with a Marxist-oriented black gang called the Black Guerrilla Family, or the BGF, and the Mexican Mafia formed a loose alliance with white supremacist prison gang called the Aryan Brotherhood. And the Mexican Mafia formed a loose alliance with white supremacist prison gang called the Aryan Brotherhood. During the following year, 1972, there was a bloodbath of 36 murders in California State Prison, and gang experts believed La M was responsible for as many as 30 of them. Meanwhile, the Mafia terror reached out into the streets for the first time. On December 6, 1971, the body of Mexican Mafia soldier Alfie Apache Alvarez was found lying in a pool of his own blood in a local park in the city of Monterey Park, a bedroom community of 55,000 people that rubbed up against East Los Angeles. Apache, 3 bullet holes to his head, was executed because he failed to pull off a daring escape plot designed to free several incarcerated Emmer brothers while on their way to court in San Bernardino County. Police didn't know that, but they found a hand-sized blue address book in his shirt pocket. Some of the names listed had the letters Emmer written next to it. Detectives comparing the notes then found there had been an earlier torture execution-style murder in San Bernardino County. Jimmy Lopez had been given some Emmer heroin to sell on consignment, but instead he used it himself. He was methodically shot in the knee, the shoulder, and other parts of the body. He was found with his pants down around his ankles and a bloody 14-inch screwdriver lying on the ground next to him. It had been shoved up his rectum. The coroner estimated that Jimmy was tortured for about 3 hours before he died in a remote canyon in the San Gabriel Mountains. A number of Emmer brothers were now out on parole, stockpiling weapons and setting up drug connections. Apache's execution illustrated that the Emmer would not hesitate to take out one of their own. Along with Jimmy Lopez's hit, it showed that the Mexican Mafia could get you anywhere, anytime, not just behind prison walls. On November 18, 1971, a parolee named James Chapo Sinclair was found in the Lincoln Park area in Los Angeles. Hands and feet tied, 3 bullets in the head, execution style. Sinclair had been trying to get federal grant money to set up a drug rehabilitation program. La M didn't like the competition. Millions in grant money was being handed out during the 1970s for drug rehab programs. It was Cheyenne Cadena's idea to take them over. And the Mafia did infiltrate at least 4 of these Los Angeles area-based projects. Emmer parolees were hired as counselors, and ghost slots were set up for Emmer members. Were paid and never showed up for work at all. Other monies were siphoned off to buy drugs, finance other illegal activities, or pay for Mafia entertainment. And ironically, the programs gave La M direct access to hundreds, if not thousands, of heroin users who would buy their product. It was an effective scam that generated a steady stream of illegal big bucks. By the end of 1972, Cheyenne Cadena, after brokering a short truce with Nuestra Familia in 1971, was transferred to Palm Hall, a high-security lockup in California Institution for Men, CIM, in Chino, and NF stronghold at the time. Cadena was a visionary and believed that brown men, La Raza, should unite against the common enemy, the establishment. Bloodthirsty hardliners like Joe Morgan disagreed. Munda Mendoza says, many of us considered it unacceptable to engage in dialogue with a group we considered inferior, La Nuestra Familia. We consider them as pests that need to be exterminated. Besides, an enemy was an enemy forever. The Farmeros should die. Munda remembers, while Shai was engaged in dialogue, Emmer members in different prisons were killing farmers. In fact, a couple of MS soldiers in a different section in the same Chino prison where Cadena was seeking peace stabbed 2 NF members. On December 17, 1972, the NF took its revenge. Cadena came out of his cell to go out to the exercise yard and was met by a group of angry Nuestra Familia hitmen. He was stabbed again and again and clubbed with a lead pipe. His near lifeless body was then thrown from the second balcony. When he hit the ground, another NF soldado continued to slash away at his torso. The coroner counted 57 stab wounds. Cheyenne Cadena was dead at the age of 29. Any thought of peace between the NF and ME died with him. The carnage would continue for decades. Mundo Mendoza explained the outrage over Cheyenne's killing was deeply rooted in arrogance. We were more offended by the disrespect shown to our organization than the fact that Cadena was killed. It was a blow to our huge egos that a farmer killed a highly placed ME member. In 1977, the state of California eliminated indeterminate prison sentences, except for first-degree murder. All sentences were changed to a determinate number of years behind bars, and everyone was given a parole date. This ruling released a new wave of Mexican Mafia members onto the streets. It became apparent in a 1976 photo at the ME funeral of La M's Jesse Chuy Fraijo of Norwalk, who died of a drug overdose, when more than a dozen Mexican Mafia members posed for a picture. They all wore collared jackets or sweaters, not just to protect themselves from the nippy air, but to more easily conceal the weapons hidden under their clothing. Morgan's bald head stood higher than others, who still wore their hair long, most of them down below their ears in the fashion of the 70s. Half of them sported Fu Manchu mustaches, and more than a few hid their eyes behind dark glasses. Mundo explained afterwards that he, Morgan, and a few others forced heroin dealers to sell only their heroin. If they didn't, he added, we killed them. We sent a message. Sell our dope or die. We'd kill someone and then go to a Dodger baseball game. It was strictly business, nothing personal. Eddie Lalo Moreno, made in the 1970s and now dead, claimed the average ME recruit had killed 3 to 4, Eddie Lalo Moreno, made in the 1970s and now dead, claimed the average ME recruit had killed 3 or 4 murders under his belt. You start to enjoy it after a while, he said, to see a person plead and cry for help. Literally pray to you like a saint, and you just get hopped up. The blood, everything, it's weird. It's a sickness. It was a sickness that would clearly afflict Rene Enriquez in the years to come, as he tried to live up to the bloody, ruthless, treacherous history of those who came before him in La M. There's ways to support this channel, and the most important way that you can do that costs you no money is hitting like, leaving a comment, and watching the video in its entirety. So we're not here asking for money, although we do have merch for sale. I just want to keep it real, folks. That's what this channel's been about. I forgot most of this stuff, and it's just jumping at me in the pages, because there's so much history packed into the book, particularly about the history with the NF and the Mexican Mafia, and the objectives of Cheyenne Cadena to unite the NF and the ME. In fact, he was going to be targeted had he continued to participate in that activity. While Mexican Mafia members are actually going out and killing NF members, he's in house with them in Palm Hall attempting to arrange peace. Completely contradictory in the philosophy of the organization. I think he would have fared not well if he had survived. He might have been targeted by the organization for elimination. With that said, as always, like, subscribe, hype. Peace out.